Hello and welcome to It's About Crime with me, Miss Cabo, the channel that discusses the who, what, how and why behind true crimes. Quick disclaimer that although I have studied psychology and I have a huge interest in it, I have no qualifications on the subject. All the information in these videos is from research and the professional opinions of police and psychologists. Please be aware that this video does contain disturbing content, so viewer discretion is advised. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the heartbreaking case of Skylar Neese. Now, Skylar Neese was born on the 10th of February 1996 in West Virginia to her parents David and Mary Neese. Now, Skylar was an only child. She was described by her parents as a hard-working, honest student who had a bright future ahead of her. She had two best friends, Sheila and Rachel. Skylar met Sheila in elementary school and they had been inseparable. And Rachel joined their group in the first year of high school. The friendship with Sheila and Rachel became unbalanced as Rachel and Skylar began competing to be the closer friend of Sheila. And Sheila enjoyed the attention. Skylar was also seen as the emotional rock of this group. Skylar was known as a bubbly girl and a loyal friend. Her dream was to become a criminal defence attorney. She worked a part-time job at Wendy's and really seemed to be liked by all that knew her. On the 5th of July 2012, Skylar returned home to her family's apartment in Star City at around 10 p.m. from her shift at Wendy's. She spoke to her parents, then kissed them goodnight and went to her room. That would be the last time that her parents would see her. Early in the morning of the 6th of July, her parents left for work, assuming that Skylar was still in bed following her late shift. Dave, her father, came home at lunchtime so that Skylar could borrow his car for her shift at Wendy's. He realised that no one was home and that Skylar's bedroom door was locked. He went outside and he noticed that there was a small bench under Skylar's open window, and he realised that she must have snuck out during the night. He called Sheila to find out if she knew where Skylar was, and Sheila told him that she spoke to her on the phone around midnight, but that was all. Mary, Skylar's mother, returned home and she soon received a call from the manager at Wendy's, who was asking where Skylar was as she hadn't shown up for her shift. This was extremely unlike Skylar, so concern began to grow and Mary and Dave called the police to report their daughter missing. Now, soon after this, Sheila called back and admitted that she had actually seen Skylar the previous night, that her and Rachel had picked her up around 11 and then they dropped her back around midnight, just less than an hour after they picked her up after doing a little bit of joyriding. So Sheila and her mother went to the Neese's apartment to try and help find Skylar. They and a Star City police officer asked neighbours if they'd seen Skylar. A surveillance video at the apartment complex showed Skylar leaving out of her bedroom window at 12:30 a.m. on the 6th of July and getting into a sedan, which in England we would call a saloon. Following this video, the police said that Skylar had more than likely run away with someone and would come back. So Dave and Mary knew that this was unlikely, but felt that they had no options at this point other than putting up missing posters. Officer Jessica Colbank was assigned by Star City Police Department to the case. Sheila was invited in on the 9th of July for an interview and repeated what she had previously said. Although Colbank stated that Sheila was more curious about the investigation rather than her missing friend, and she described her as narcissistic and just felt like she was wrong, like her vibe just felt wrong. Colbank questioned why she dropped her off so far from home, as she didn't drop her off right outside the apartment. She was quite far up the road away from the CCTV. And Sheila insisted that they always did that so that it wouldn't wake Skylar's parents and they wouldn't know that she had snuck out. The next day, Officer Colbank called Rachel, who claimed to not know that Skylar had even disappeared. She'd been boating with her mother on the 6th of July and she actually left for a church camp on the 7th of July. She did agree to come in for a face-to-face interview when she returned from camp, but she never showed up. When Rachel was finally interviewed, she told the same story as Sheila, and they noted that it was suspicious how their stories matched to such a degree, and it almost felt like they had rehearsed it. However, as Skylar had been seen voluntarily getting into the car, she was considered a runaway. And due to this, no Amber Alert was issued as there was no abduction. The friends and family of Skylar didn't think that she'd run away, as it was just so out of her character. She'd also left her phone charger and her contact lenses at home, and the window that she had snuck out from had a bench underneath, which they believed showed that she had every intention of returning and was going to use that bench to get back into her bedroom window. So on the 24th of August, Mary Neese had had enough, and she had an outburst at the Star City Police Department, who then decided to contact the state police, who immediately took on the case. The school year then started on the 16th of August, and there was still no sign of Skylar. She didn't turn up for the start of school. And then rumours began spreading in the halls of the school. There was rumours that Skylar had overdosed and that Sheila and Rachel had panicked and just left her somewhere. And there were so many people that had commented that they did not seem bothered by their best friend's disappearance. On social media, there were only a few random mentions of Skylar whenever it seemed convenient. Skylar's two best friends had both been handling her disappearance very differently. Sheila had been trying to get involved in the investigation, while Rachel had been trying to get away from it. Sheila would go round to Skylar's parents and cry with them. She'd known Skylar for such a long time and she would attempt to help. And with the questions from authorities and the rumours at school just carried on progressing, Rachel's mental health really began to decline. Phone records and CCTV footage showed that the girls had been near Blacksville that night, and Skylar had been texting them when she was supposed to be joyriding with them. So both Sheila and Rachel then changed their stories to say that Skylar ran off into the woods near Brave, but they just couldn't find her. On the 28th of December, Rachel had a breakdown, and this led to a physical altercation with her mum, and her mum called 911. Rachel barricaded herself in her room and threatened to kill herself. When police arrived, Rachel was taken to a psychiatric hospital and was released 5 days later on the 3rd of January. Following her release, Rachel's parents took her straight to an attorney's office where an interview had been arranged with the investigators. And that is when the truth was finally revealed. After only a few questions into the interview, Rachel muttered the words, "We stabbed her." Following this, she told the police the story of what actually happened to Skylar. She said that on the 5th of July, around midnight, Rachel and Sheila texted Skylar to come for a joyride. Skylar snuck out of her room and got into Sheila's car, and this was the car that was seen on the surveillance video. And unknown to Skylar, the boot contained a shovel, clean clothes, towels and bleach. The girls had put their own kill kit in the boot of the car. They drove out of the state going west, and they stopped on a one-lane back road near Brave in Pennsylvania. The girls got out of the car and talked for a while. Then Skylar started walking back to the car to get a lighter, as the girls were planning on smoking some weed. Then Rachel and Sheila counted to 3 and then stabbed Skylar with the knives that were hidden in their hoodies. Skylar tried to run, but she was tackled to the ground by Rachel. Skylar tried to fight back, and even managed to cut Rachel's leg with the knife. But she was overpowered by the two girls. And as they stood over her, watching her die, in her last moment, she simply asked, "Why?" Skylar had been stabbed over 50 times. She was just 16 years old. Sheila and Rachel planned to bury Skylar, but the ground was too rocky for their shovels. So instead they moved her body near a large tree and they covered her with branches and rocks. The girls then washed themselves in a nearby creek. They got rid of their bloody clothes and their knives, and they left Skylar's phone turned off next to her body. Sheila and Rachel returned home at dawn. When the police asked why they did it, Rachel just said, "We just didn't like her anymore." So after Rachel's confession, she agreed to take them to the body immediately. When they arrived at the location, there was too much snow and Rachel couldn't point out the exact place, so investigators had to wait for the snow to melt. Even with Rachel's confession, the police had no evidence beyond this until they could retrieve Skylar's body. So it was 2 weeks later, on the 16th of January, that the investigators returned with a canine unit. Most of the snow had gone, and after 6 months, Skylar had finally been found. During the following months, police gathered evidence against the two girls, but particularly Sheila, as they knew that she would never admit to the crime and that she'd been cornered. They obtained a warrant and found Skylar's blood in Sheila's boot. On the 13th of March, once the identity of the body had been verified, Skylar's death was made public, but no details of the circumstances were revealed, although her parents, Mary and Dave, had been told a month earlier that it was Skylar that they found. On the day of the announcement, Sheila tweeted, "Rest easy, Skylar. You'll always be my best friend." And Rachel posted several tweets, including, "Rest in peace, baby. I love and miss you more than anything. May you finally have justice." The audacity of these girls, I'm sorry, but unbelievable. When it comes to the psychological theories of this case, it's really difficult to find any information regarding it, as the official mental health of the girls had not been released and still to this day hasn't been released to the public. I did find a psychologist called Dr. Todd Grande who talks about this on his YouTube channel. So I'm just going to be discussing the theories that he has, what he thinks about how likely they are, and the behaviour of the girls in clips and interviews that he has seen. So he does say that it seemed like Sheila was more worried about how her hair looked during her arrest. She thought that there would be cameras there to photograph her and wanted to make sure that she looked amazing and looked her best, and there wasn't any cameras there to photograph her when she'd been arrested. Sheila had previously been asking her friends on video calls how they'd prefer to be killed, if they'd prefer to be drowned or stabbed or shot, and this just shows that she had an interest in murder. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that anyone who has an interest in murder is going to commit that crime. I obviously have an interest in murders and things like that, but I would never go out and kill anybody. But it just has that look, as when you actually find out what she does, that really is something that did interest her beforehand, and it really was a planned attack. The investigators described Sheila as arrogant and narcissistic and calm and just wrong, but Rachel was described as very nervous and really quite remorseful at what she'd done. It's also, Dr. Grande noted that this type of homicide is very rare, You don't often get two young girls like this killing another girl in this way. And he believes that it's unlikely that they would have done this alone. So it was the two of them together that allowed this crime to happen. Neither of them would have attacked and killed Skylar by themselves. So it was the two together that actually caused this. So the first theory that he talks about is that there was rumours that Rachel and Sheila were romantically involved, and that Skylar knew about this and had threatened to out them both. Now, the problem with this theory is, would they care? Would they have cared to be outed in 2012? You know, it was still, we were progressing towards it being acceptable to be gay, and it wasn't as shameful. Not that it's shameful in any way, but previously the shame that had been attached to that would be quite high. But I feel in 2012 there wasn't that stigma and that shame. So it also shows that if they were so worried that they were going to be outed, they would have needed to act sooner than what they actually did. They clearly planned this attack out. They had everything ready. So it took them a while to actually go through with their plan to hurt Skylar. And if they felt like they were under a time pressure, they probably would have acted sooner. So it does look like that theory doesn't really apply here. Also, usually in crimes where knives are involved, it usually is a more intimate kill. It allows you to get much more close to the victim than if you were going to shoot them, for example. So most of the time people say that it's an intimate form of killing, and what Dr. Grande does say is he doesn't believe in this case that that's what it was. He believes that it was purely for practical reasons, that it was easier for the girls to get hold of knives than to get hold of a gun, for example. So it wasn't, he doesn't feel like it was a more intimate killing, it was just more practical and convenient for the girls. Now, the second theory is called folie à deux. Now, you may have heard of this before, and folie à deux translates to delusion for two. So what it is if there's a belief that one of the girls was psychotic and the other became exposed to it, they could share that psychosis. So it does explain the consistency in their stories and the behaviour, that it was so easy for them to come up with this plan and do it together. So folie à deux is a possibility, but the issue is that we don't know if one of them had been diagnosed with psychosis. Them records have never been released, so it's difficult to say if that was true, because we don't know if one of them was medically labelled with psychosis. Although this crime is similar to others where psychosis was involved, it's impossible for us to confirm that without seeing the medical records for it. And then the third theory that he talks about, which is the most likely, is the sensation seeking. So the thrill of committing these crimes. So it's callous, it's cold, and it's sadistic. And it means that these people are usually disconnected from empathy and connected with the narcissism within themselves. So they care more about themselves, their feelings, than having any empathy for others. And Sheila certainly displays this more than Rachel does. They also didn't demonstrate a high psychopathy. So although they did drink and they used substances like weed and would often skip school, we wouldn't put that down as true psychopathic traits, because it's not the extreme behaviour that you would usually see, like robberies, theft, assaults. Those are normally the things that you would see that build up to this, that show the psychopathy behind it. Pathological lying is a huge part of the sensation seeking. Sheila maintained dialogue with the Skylar family throughout it all. She pretended to be concerned about what happened, and it just shows that how manipulative she is and her lack of empathy. And it might be that that's the side of the psychopathy that she has, rather than the bad behaviour aspect. Like, she may be more manipulative, so she might have more of a manipulative psychopathy. Again, these are all theories because we don't know for definite, but this is the idea of what is going on with them. They were able to function like psychopaths, so they were able to stay calm and normalising themselves after, carrying on with their lives as if nothing had happened. And then you have the fact that on the 1st of April 2013, so after Skylar's body had been found, Sheila tweeted, "We really did go on 3." I mean, that shows no empathy whatsoever. That it was almost a joke to her that, wow, we really did do it. And that's just despicable to me. And you know, I'm not a professional by any means, but if that's not psychopathic, then I really don't know what is, because that just shows her complete lack of remorse for what she's done. So on the 1st of May, Rachel surrendered herself to the authorities, as had been previously agreed that she would do so. She appeared in court and her status was changed from juvenile to adult. She pled guilty to the murder of Skylar and she agreed to testify against Sheila. This was in exchange for the West Virginia prosecution to recommend 20 years for second-degree murder, and that the Pennsylvania prosecution agreed that they would not prosecute her. So because the girls crossed state lines and committed the crime in a different state, they could have been prosecuted in both, but Pennsylvania agreed they wouldn't if she accepted these terms. After her plea hearing, she was taken to a juvenile detention centre. Later that same day, Sheila was arrested for murder and taken to a different juvenile detention centre. Soon after, the media reported that Rachel and an unknown juvenile had been arrested for Skylar's murder. The students at the high school were shocked. Although Sheila could not be named, they were drawing their own conclusions. The public had a pretty good idea of who the second person that had been arrested was. Finally, on the 4th of September, Sheila was transferred to adult status and her name could be made public. She had an arraignment on the 17th of September and was charged with murder, kidnapping and conspiracy, and she pled not guilty. The trial date had been set for the 22nd of October, which was then moved to the 28th of January, with a pre-trial hearing on the 24th of January. The hearing was broadcast live on the internet, and in contrast to any previous appearances, she started sobbing as soon as she sat down before the trial had even begun. And in a complete 180, she pled guilty, and she was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 15 years. And again, Pennsylvania State agreed not to prosecute. So Rachel was sentenced on the 2nd of February, and she apologised personally to the Neese family and accepted her 30-year sentence stoically. She got 30 years because the judge decided to add the extra 10. 20 had been requested and recommended, but the judge decided she needed 10 more. Both Sheila Eddy and Rachel Shove are currently serving their sentences at Lakin Correctional Centre. Sheila transferred there in February 2014 and Rachel in July 2014. On the 9th of May 2023, Rachel appeared before the parole boards where her parole was denied, rightfully so, I think. Since Skylar's murder, a new addendum to the law called Skylar's Law took effect in West Virginia. After Skylar's murder, the Neese family pushed to get a state legislator in West Virginia to modify the Amber Alert plan. So when Skylar went missing, there was no Amber Alert issued, and that's because there are 4 certain types of criteria that need to be involved in order for an Amber Alert to be issued. Those are, the first one is that law enforcement must confirm that an abduction has taken place. Number 2 is the child must be at risk of serious injury or death. Number 3 is there must be sufficient descriptive information of the child, captor or captor's vehicle to issue an alert. And number 4, the child must be under 17 years of age. Now, because they believed that Skylar had voluntarily run away, they didn't consider her to be abducted. So because that wasn't the case and it wasn't part of the Amber Alert, it wasn't issued. Her family pushed to get this changed, and that any child who is reported missing and in danger, regardless of whether they've been kidnapped or not, an Amber Alert should be issued. And this was actually finally pushed through in May of 2013. So as heartbreaking and sad as what happened to Skylar is, there have been amendments to hopefully stop it happening to somebody else. And Skylar's family is so incredible for pushing so hard to get that done. And hopefully that will, even if it just helps one more person, then it was worth adding that to the law. So an incredible, incredible family. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting. If you did, please hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss any of our future videos. Thank you again. Take care.